What I want to do is I start with the events one, right? So I'm going to click on events. So I'm just going to show you what I've already, right? So in doing that, I'm just showing you the parameters that I have set up, right? So I have workflow details. Now you'll see that as is consistent with Earth Ranger, if something is required, it has a little asterisk next to the title of that specific field, right? So workflow name is necessary, right? Because I'm creating a copy, it'll say Easter Island events dash copy, and then I can give it a description. So here I just put in the date of which I'm trying to, or which I want to analyze the events from the Easter Island site. Then I have the data source. Because I'm only connected to a single data source, it by default uses that data source. If I had multiple, this would be a drop-down field wherein I can choose what I want to connect to. And then time range is just basically like any other time range you've used. As far as Earth Ranger is concerned, is the daytime period of the amount of data that you want to analyze, basically the time frame of data that you want to analyze, right? Then if I go to the bottom, then I can get into the crux of which events do I specifically want to analyze from our Easter Island demo site, right? So then I can choose, and you'll see it's as easy as you just choose your event types from a list. So if I wanted to add an additional one, I'd say add, and you'll see if I drop down, then it'll give me all of the available event types within my data source with Ranger side, right? So if I'm looking for wildlife sighting, for instance, so I can type that out like that and say wildlife sighting. And then once I'm happy with that, or I can add an additional one, but I'll leave it at those 5, right? And you can also change them around. You can change the order around if you prefer. So if I want this one to be right at the top, move eBird to the bottom, you'll see they kind of change around, right? So they swap according to how you want. And if I now remove one, so I don't want to see wildlife sightings actually, I can just remove it like that. And I can look for another one. And then once I'm done, happy with my choice of event types, then I can choose. Now I've chosen the date, the event types that I want to analyze. The next thing is how do I want to group this data, which will determine how the data is presented on my dashboard. And now the nice thing with Ecoscope, because it was created with it was designed with the conservation practitioner, data analyst, and researcher alike, it was created to be intuitive and very easy to use, right? So you'll see that as you navigate through the system, these like tips and kind of like guidelines of what you are configuring before you even configure it. And what I mean by that is if I highlight this part here, it tells you what it is that you're specifying where under the group data parameter, right? So you can see exactly what it is that you are specifying and what happens if you add a parameter or if you leave it out, right? It basically explains itself so that you don't have to wonder about what it is that you are doing. So right now in this example, I've grouped these by time, and the time parameter then has obviously its different attributes. Or if I wanted, I could say, okay, group these by category. And then if I choose by category, I'll say, okay, give me by event type, right? So you always have the category or time group by. So in this instance, I'm going to say go back to time, and my time should be, let's use day of the month, right? And I can have multiple groupers, right? So I could say grouped by time using time of the month, day of the month. And then you could also group by category per event type if you want to. Obviously, your filters have to be correlational. They have to make sense. It can't be too outward because then you're going to have a very jaded presentation as far as your dashboard is concerned. All right. So if I don't want category, just take that out, and everything else related to that falls away, right? So I'm just going to use that one group or that grouper. And then you have more advanced configurations, right? So if I toggle to the bottom here, it shows you exactly what I'm looking at. So this is a bounding box. If you have a specific area wherein you want to analyze events for, you can define that box of where you just want to focus the analysis within, right? And I just left it empty because I want to analyze for our entire locality, our entire region, right? And then you also then get an opportunity to define the events bar chart, time interval, because you chose time. Is it by year, month, week, or day, right? So you're going to say day. And then you also have opportunity of saying or defining your base maps, right? So by default, you'll get a terrain and a satellite map within Ecoscope. You can add your own if you so wish, or you can change these around where, because terrain is the first one, you can say, I want satellite to be the first one. I'm just going to move terrain back. So you can order these around like so. And then I can scroll to the bottom and say, okay, then I can define an event density map as well. So this is another advanced configuration. So here you define a grid cell size, coordinate reference system. And as I said, you have these tooltips within each and every section or parameter that you are defining to advise you, to inform you what it is that you are setting up, right? So normally for me, I would leave the advanced configurations as is, unless if you're really trying to narrow down on specifics, then maybe they would be applicable to your specific application. But in this instance, I just leave them as is, and I define the elements that are pertinent to what I'm trying to analyze from my database. So once I'm happy with that, I'll say submit. It'll land on my workflows, as you see this one here, and I'll say events workflow. The status will be ready, right? And then I'll have a little run button here on the side, right? And once it has run successfully, then if I click on that workflow, this is what I'll have access to. Now I'll see it's still computing. Let me just move myself here to the middle. It is still computing. And remember, as I say, the more data you have pulled out or you're analyzing, then the more time it'll probably take to compute all of that information for you. Now, this is what I have basically analyzed from my side. And this is now the dashboard of what I am looking at, right? I have my month, right? And then I have all of my events on the map. This is an interactive map, by the way. It's not static. And I can hover over specific points to tell a story, right? So I can see that is a firm's event. That is a just move this around. Or that's another thing you can do as well. You can edit your layout for better visualization. Right now you have all of those dates there. So I can hover over a point. I can zoom in. Right, like I said, the maps are interactive. I can zoom in. So that is the event. If I want to get in closer, I can go there. That's a firm's rep event. And that is a SNE event. Right, this is over the month of September, right? And that is another SNE event. And you can tell all of the kind of the summary detail, the event serial number, who reported it, the event date and time, right? And then you have the bar graph in here, and you can hover over the elements within the bar graph as well to get a more clearer story. And as you can see, you can already identify a gap that the team collected, or for the events that we are querying. We have no data related to them between the 6th and the 8th of September, right? So that's just the first part of the dashboard. And what you can do as well, what's available to you, is you can move your dashboard around, right? So I can have my bar chart, my pie chart, and then after that, I have my events map and my density map, right? So obviously with my density map, it just shows me that within this pixel, a pixel just represents one event, right? And as you can see, our events are sparsely scattered around the Easter Island, from southeast, southwestern, more central, and then within an outlier all the way to the eastern part of Easter Island. Right. So this is the dashboard that you would get as far as the parameters that you define. Obviously, in your context, when you run this through a more data-rich Earth Ranger site, you will get more telling results in terms of what you're trying to analyze. Right, I'm just gonna try and push this to the top. Let me just bring this guy back down here. Sorry. Let me pull this guy to the top then. So you can just basically play around with the view of what you want to show. That's basically what you have the ability to do, right? Define your parameters, filters, and run your workflow. It'll compute and analyze the data and offer you a dashboard, which you can change the orientation and the presentation of around, right? All right, so that's what you can do.